right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Robert. I'm a researcher at 1KX. And I want to talk with you about the savings on safes and some more user data. And maybe to start with, let's maybe look at how many safes we are talking about. Over 4.5 million, actually. The question is semi-serious. Not too long ago, you used to be quite special when you could call yourself a safe creator. Seems that's gone. More serious, you see those bumps in Optimism and Polygon. This is related to WorldCoin. So roughly 1 million safes are on Polygon related to WorldCoin, 500,000 Optimism. But even if you put those aside, I mean, these numbers are quite impressive. And more growth coming as also new networks joined the server base recently, right? Just going vertical. And I don't know, anybody knows actually on how many chains safes are deployed? Any guess? 50? 12? 130? So the answer is like, I don't know either. I asked Covalent because I would guess they probably have the broadest view across chains and data there, and they told me it's over 80. There's a lot of testnets also, so 35 testnets or whatever. It's just a lot, and I don't know. It might be a good exercise for the safe team actually to figure the exact number out. Richard, maybe you know. We want to better understand what all these safes are doing, and obviously the first thing is these 4.5 million safes. They're not all that active, right? So if you say, okay, they need to do at least one transaction this year, or at least have like $1 on the safe, then it's roughly like half of that, over 2 million safes that are active. And the question is like, and it varies over chain, obviously, but the question is like, what are they doing? The most obvious use case, obviously, for safe is to store money. And I saw the print on the poster that actually says the total assets on safes is over 60 billion. That's true, right? Like the dollar value of crypto assets are fluctuating. I pulled the data on end of August. There was like 55, 56 billion. 50. That's why I feel like, okay, saying it's over 50 billion is probably the safest answer you can get if you ask about that. More interesting is then the distribution across those major chains, where obviously Ethereum takes the biggest chunk, but also the L2s and other chains take larger shares. Let's dive more into that one as a first aspect of what users doing, related to the question about like this 50, is it 60, whatever. Or actually, let's first look what they're storing. It's mainly ERC20s, no surprise. Only on Ethereum you have like roughly 10%, like 2-3 billion in ETH stored. All other chains, the share of native coins isn't that large. And also some NFTs, but also just on Ethereum, roughly 150 million worth of NFTs. That used to be more. That is what it is. And talking about used to be more, there's also things talking about the fluctuation of the assets under management. For example, Arbitrum had their investor unlocks vestings on Arbitrum in a safe, and that used to be 1 billion more like a couple of months ago. That's what brings me to the question, okay, how does it actually look over time? And data is complicated. We just focus on Ethereum for now. This chart is not very interesting, I guess. It's just like, okay, obviously as the market goes down, the dollar value of the assets under management go down. One aspect that you can add is also same axis, but now in percentage points. What's the share of stable coins? The market goes down, but then 10% all the way to like 25%. In parallel, the share of stable coins on the safes increase. The interesting piece is that it even increases further all the way to 30%. And yeah, now we're more like, right, about these 25%. And yeah, there are some events where you can say, oh, you know, there's some obviously correlation. What happened in May 2022? I mean, you know it probably. So still a thing where you say, okay, let's maybe look at another metric that's more insightful than just the dollar value, because you want to see how does it asset under management relate to the crypto market. And this is what we did now on the right axis. As you can see, it's actually quite stable in the range between 2 and 3%. And that's just Ethereum, right? So with the previous slide, you can add up the number of over 5%. And yeah, the stableness is interesting, but then you have all these bumps again. And that tells you something about, okay, what happened then? And this were some events where you can say, okay, these are probably good reminders for users where your money is really safe. Because apparently, you know, people started shifting around those events. But yeah, before we jump too deep more into the whole, you know, savings on safes, let's maybe look at what people do otherwise with their safes, because it's not just storing money. They also do, you know, some stuff with their money. They transact, transfer, interact with protocols and things like that. I mean, 2023, you know, the average transaction per month over the safes is like more than 1.5 million. Yeah, cool number, right? It doesn't tell you anything. I don't know if anybody knows if this is a lot or not. So let's maybe put this into context, into the relative share, basically per chain. How does it relate? And maybe let's start with Ethereum again. Because, I mean, at the beginning, it's just Ethereum, right? But then you see this black line. We're basically at, yeah, something around 0.1, 0.2%. What surprised me a bit is like, okay, this share is actually ever increasing, right? Because you would imagine the whole, it's like the AUM is stable over time, but the share of transaction increases. So that might be something pointing towards, okay, the use cases of safes goes more towards, well, use cases where you have more transactions, which I guess is bots. And yeah, then there's obviously differences between the different chains. I think the aggregate is really cool that in August we almost hit 1% of those chains together. I learned, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, these are called the strategic chains. And yeah, really impressive then also, right, Gnosis, the maximum like 6%. That must have been March or something of the total transactions. Okay, yeah, and with that, that's kind of like one level deeper. Let's go now to the wallet level. And what you see here is basically per chain, all the wallets that, or all the safes, not wallets, sorry, all the safes that did a transaction in 2023. How many transactions did they do per month in 2023? And maybe again, like take Ethereum because it's easy to read. That means basically this is the median, right? These are box plots, so this is the median. So roughly one transaction per month is what 50% of all safes on Ethereum did in 2023. And then it kind of like makes sense that some chains, you know, this is even higher. What I guess is also quite interesting is to see how high that can get, right? I mean, even on Ethereum, right, there's some folks that do over 100,000 transactions per month in 2023. Yeah, let's maybe see if we can get through the whole point, because for questions, you know, we need to pass mics for the record and stuff, but keep that in mind. So I will also hurry to get through this. Yeah, we can obviously also say, okay, coming back to like how many safes is that actually, right? This is not all like 4.5 billion, right? It's more like half of that, what we have here. And I think, and also different over chains again. And I think what is interesting related to like this long tail of like very large transactions is that this is the typical crypto concentration that you see. Right? Because when you ask yourself, okay, the top 1% of safes, for example, on Ethereum, like ranked by transactions. How much of the total transaction do they do in 2023? And then you see there's almost 90%, so quite concentrated. It was good to see, okay, on the other, on Optimism, Polygon, that's not that concentrated. Really surprised was BNB, where apparently there's a lot of BNB transactions going on. But yeah, first deep dive into the wallets. Let's maybe come back to this view and come back to the money, to the assets under management, and see how does that distribute across safes. And again, we have some chains, and then this is again all the safes that have some AUM on their wallet on the safe right now. Big range again. It does make sense that for Ethereum the median is like a little bit above 10. It's probably, oh, actually didn't pull that number. Could be 50. So $50 is like the median for Ethereum. Arbitrum lower, right? And then the rest in between. And again, like a very long tail. I mean, over billion. There's some safes with more than $1 billion on it. And yeah, here it's even well, don't know if you call it better or worse, but it's just like currently this is not a huge share of safes actually that have more than $1 on it, and consequently the concentration is like, yeah, it's just like the one top percent basically always have all the money on the safes. Okay, so we saw the transactions, we saw the money. Let's try to bring this together. And this is again Ethereum, and this is all the safes there are on Ethereum over the lifetime, like 170,000. And on the x-axis, we have the current dollar value of the AUM, again ranging from like a cent to over $1 billion. We have the number of transactions per month live, because obviously, if you just go by transaction count, you might be skewing a little bit. So I normalize by basically saying, okay, give me all the transactions you did in your lifetime, and then divide by your lifetime. Lifetime is the darker, the longer you are alive, or the older you're safe. And yeah, the larger the bubble, the more transactions you did. So obviously, the guys up here quite crazy amount of transactions. And yeah, let's look at who are these guys. Yeah, the safe was like more than, I think it's 4 billion, I don't know. BitDAO, they even have like a mantle, another one close to $1 billion. Yeah, and then some more. Vitalik, also prominent safe owner with quite some money on it. And yeah, you can do the same on the y-axis actually, where you see, I mean here it gets a little bit blurrier. Like these are less known labels. Not sure if anybody in the crowd is like working on labeling solutions, but that would be helpful to better understand like who are all these guys. But just from their usage, you can probably infer that typically bots or some contracts. And yeah, regarding segmentation, what you could do is then you can obviously say, okay, let's draw a line, maybe at 100 transactions per month live, because it feels quite active. Each month that you have your safe, you do more than 100 transactions. It's just 400 safes, but they do this year basically over 80% of all the transactions, right? And just in perspective, 400 safes, that's less than 0.25% of all the safes out there. So very small, very large share. You can draw also a line here at the 10 million, where you see, okay, it's even less safes. And really, it's just like these ones, right? Where we see, okay, this is already 80% of the AUM that have more than $10 million on their safe. And obviously, this increases if you also put these guys. And yeah, coming back to the NFT comment earlier, Yuga Labs is probably doing almost half of this NFT volume or value on safes. They have, CryptoPunks and a lot of other stuff. I mean, you can check out their wallet. 80 million or something like that. Okay, and then, yeah, right, then you have some remainder where you see, okay, there's a lot of other safes. I found it quite interesting to see that there's actually a lot of safes that have basically 0 on their safe, but do quite a lot of transactions. I mean, since I needed to do a log chart, right, they're not showing, but if you plot it, they would show up here, and these are then most likely bots, because if you just have like some small gas money and do some transactions, yeah, that feels like must be bots. And yeah, obviously, how you draw these lines, this is a little bit of art, I would say. This is more like for the business people. I'm more the data guy, and yeah, the main message is like, okay, this is one cut across. Okay, how old is your safe, and then how much you do, and how much you put out there, because you already can see, okay, there's obviously a very wealthy chunk that don't do much with their safes. They just use it as a Swiss bank account, right? Put it there in the mountain, set and forget, it's safe. But then there's also these guys who are like, okay, I move around a lot of money and I move it around a lot, so I also want to make sure that nothing gets lost when I do this. And then there's probably like a really large amount in terms of like safes that probably still need to figure out if they go this route or that route. And yeah, we can repeat this exercise on the other chains as well. The interesting piece is what we already saw on the previous slides, right, when I showed those box plots, that it's a little bit different, not as much concentration as on Ethereum, which I would assume is related also a little bit on the business cycle, the maturity, also like the user persona on those chains, right? Because probably on Arbitrum it's different than on Ethereum. So not going to dive too deep into the data here. Also regarding the labor problem here, really, yeah, you look it up. Nobody knows who all these guys are. There's only a few ones where you know them. I mean, on Polygon, obviously, KeyDAO is the richest DAO. And yeah, because we also want to go to some questions, maybe I'll take a cut here. Where do we go from here? I mean, we saw, right, there's more safes on more chains doing more transactions. So that's more fun for the guys who need to pull this data. Characteristic-wise, there is a crypto-typical very heavy concentration, right, on the transaction count, but also on the AUM especially. And yeah, there's obviously way more you can dive into. There's cool dashboards on retention, module usage, I mean gas spend and transaction type, right? This probably helps you better understand what are these guys doing, but should be correlated, for example, gas spend to your transactions and also on which chain and stuff like that. But yeah, what I like you to do, please help. And these are meaty problems, right? It's also fun and you learn a lot in diving into those. And the very good news is that the SAFE team has like an absolute data chat. Daniel, unfortunately not here today, but it's a real pleasure working with him. He, whenever you need to understand where some data lives or how to look at certain data points, he would know. And yeah, before we jump into question, maybe continuing the round of applause here, who helped creating all this data. Yeah, Covalent, and I'm not sure if you know their kind of like SQL platform. Increment is a little bit hidden, but it's really good. It's like they're still ramping it up. They have lots of tables to dive into, quite performant, and also some safe-related tables. So check those out. Ellium is another one. Shout outs to Ethan, who helped especially on those very complex queries when it comes to balances over all the safes on the chains. Yeah, also something I didn't know them before. might be related because they don't have any marketing team, they don't do any BD or whatever. It's just like 9 engineers chugging along and building building good products. And yeah, Daniel again from the Safe team. Also, Josh from Parify helped, iterating on this. He should be around here today as well. And yeah, also if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me as well. And yeah, with this, I guess we still have some time left for questions. So I'll open the floor. And I don't know if you do it. Yeah, maybe just tell actually we have a mic here. Let's see. Maybe we can pass that. Okay.
Yeah, just
okay.
Quick question regarding the AUM.
Can you move closer because the?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Just regarding the AUM calculation, are you mostly looking at ERC20s and obviously native Ethereum or whatever chain you're analyzing, or are you also looking into DeFi positions? If you look into DeFi positions, how did you calculate that?
So yes, that's a very good question. I think the answer is there's different ways on different sources you use. For example, covalence query, if you use them, they kind of like have a filter to avoid timeouts where they would just say, okay, how active is this token that you're looking at? Allium actually also, they just have the token. So if you have a token like Compound's token or the Aave token, you would get that, right? However, NFTs like Uniswap v3 NFT, you don't get it, right? That's not included in the AUM. However, because I had the same question when I looked at them, like, okay, ERC20s, I buy it, that's included. What about these Uniswap positions? And I made a quick check for Ethereum and saw it was surprising me to see it just 50 million or so. That's in Uniswap positions. But that's also one of those questions where like, okay, I mean, for AUM, it's always just a snapshot. And you see there are guys that automate a lot of stuff and I guess also a lot of DeFi stuff. So, how quickly open and close. And when you look at them, did you hit them at the right time? So yeah, that's for sure a problem and something to consider. But yeah, there's also a question in the back.
Okay, this is going to reveal that I'm a total noob, but you didn't mention anything about versions. And so in the opening talk by Lucas, he mentioned that the new protocol is a complete rewrite. From what I understand, it's not live yet. So everything that you've shown is that just one version of the contract that has been live for X number of years, and we'll see migration of all of these funds to new version of Safe in the future. Is that correct?
So, I mean, obviously the new version, that's nothing because it's not live, so no data exists. All this data is just like all Safe contracts created. So I just need the address to see what's on there. There's obviously data on it, like which version is this Safe on. So you can pull this data. And it could be an interesting cut to basically cut this data across, okay, version 103. I actually don't know what the current version is, and older versions. But yeah, it's including all the safes, so there's no version excluded whatsoever. Okay. I mean, that's why the 4.5 million in the beginning, right? Because it was like, look, okay, what was it created, but it doesn't cut it into the version itself.
So who's next?
Yeah, any more questions? All right, well then.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and yeah.